All right, and we'll give it a few seconds. All right. Hello, welcome to this Sundays with Solus. My name is Joshua Strobel. I am here with Ikey, founder and lead developer of the Solus project. Good morning, Ikey.
Morning.
So this one is probably going to be a very short Sundays with Solus. At least that's what I was hoping for. And we're going to jump right into items for 1.2. So our next minor release, well, I say minor, I mean every release of Solus is pretty major. And we already have a lot of awesome things that have landed, including some really beautiful font changes. Ikey, do you mind explaining the process that people need to go through in order to get these pretty fonts and like subpixel rendering and so forth?
Yeah, so most people know the font rendering style as the so-called Ubuntu font rendering. Long story short, merged their patches into our packages. Quite aware of the fact that in the US there are some patents that apply specifically in the US to the use of subpixel rendering. So if people want to optionally enable this, they only need to install the FreeType2 subpixel package, which is separated with a hyphen. Largely inspired by Arch Linux's solution, but instead of looking for an environmental variable, we just look for a file, which means you can just install the package and it's enabled or it's not enabled, which kind of makes it opt-in at this point. We'll see which way we do that for the ISO. So.
Right, because I mean the issue with that is, of course, patent litigation. Americans love their patents.
Yeah, I mean, this project has not had the best history with lawyers. Even when we're not doing anything wrong. And I'm not saying that we are doing anything wrong. So I do think, given the fact that, the Solus project is actually based in the Republic of Ireland in Europe, there are certain things that don't apply here that do apply in the rest of the world. So what I am considering, if there's support from the community for this idea, is to do what some other projects do, which is having a so-called USA Japan ISO, which is kind of stripped of the non-labor or non-encumbered software, which would mean probably splitting up things like the VLC packages and the FreeType packages, just so those little bits aren't included in that ISO, and then having a so-called full ISO, which would have everything and the kitchen sink included. Just the stuff that we would like out of the box, but isn't possible in some countries.
That sounds pretty reasonable. So there's also been some improvements towards statelessness this cycle, which is interesting that you've already started working on that, given how far we out from 2.0, which is sort of the idea of having a full Solus stateless system. So do you mind explaining what stateless is, how it affects end users, and maybe some of the progress that has happened maybe in the last week or two for stateless?
So stateless is not a new concept, but it's only in recent years really that has made any form of headway on Linux systems. Some might have heard of this, the concept of stateless. It basically means that in the context of an operating system, it should be able to run without any default state. To go further on this, people know, outside of Solus, I do also have a job, as some people like to do. And I actually work on Intel's Clear Linux project. So within that project, the full project name is Clear Linux Project for Intel Architecture. Within that, I'm also responsible for the stateless implementation. And the way it's implemented there is traditionally you have your split between on the operating system between your home partition or your home files. That's now going to be an awkward topic with people because we don't do home partitions in Solus yet. But
Yet.
awkward.
Yeah.
But you have your user data files, which is what you consider on your home partition or your home mount or whichever, right? Then everything else at the moment has kind of been your operating system. That even includes configuration files. Now, that's kind of a problem. So you need a split between the two domains. In theory, there are three domains on your operating system. You have your user data, you have your local system-wide configuration, which is what a local system administrator would make. Now, what that means in terms of Solus or any other Linux distribution is that's shared between all accounts on the system. So they are changes that deviate from the upstream normal. So
Right.
in the case of, say, as a very trivial example, let's look at the light DM package. So by default, it has a configuration to use a specific greeter on Solus. Now, when you on your system say that you want to automatically log in, that file is then altered and an entry is added. So you now have a local configuration. However, that file is shipped in the etc tree. So if we make a change to that file upstream, you now have a diff between your version and what we have because we're shipping them both in the same place, which this leads to the supposed freeway merge situation when you're doing an upgrade. So you have to take what you have already on the system, what you have locally, and what the new version of the package has coming from upstream. And you're trying to merge all these things into one place. And at that point, you don't really know whether the configuration is your own or the operating system's, which kind of becomes complex when you think in terms of backing up data.
Right.
What do I actually back up to keep this system working again exactly as it is now on a new system? Because there is no split between the different domains. So what we're now doing, as an example for the light DM package, what would happen there is we no longer own etc. That's yours. And started making progress on that lately. So what that would mean is we would have our default stuff baked into the package and either not ship a configuration file or have a default file in another location that we will fall back to in the event your local configuration file does not exist. That means that you still have the ability to override locally. And when you do that, it has the highest precedence over what we set. So for the likes of Pulse Audio, it shipped a load of files in etc, which probably no one in the last 5 years has even considered touching, especially in Solus because we make the same default choices. We
Like
want
flat
these things
volumes.
right. So that's a perfect example. But if somebody already has that option changed locally, then they have a difference between what they have and what we have. Now, what we would like is for their configuration to be respected instead of ours and not try and clobber them together into a new configuration. So in Solus, Pulse Audio no longer ships any files in etc. These are things that will slowly make their way upstream as well. GTK2 and GTK3 no longer ship files in etc. because nobody has touched those files for so long that the relevant code in GTK3 was still looking for a GTK2 path.
Wow.
So it gives an idea how long these things have been about, and we've had this idea that etc was configuration, so everything goes there. But it's not just etc; it's var as well. It's all these different things where you should have transient data in var, like you have like your caches and things like this, that doesn't really belong anywhere else on the file system. So a package shouldn't ship it, but a package can create that. So as an example of that, font config, you have your var cache and it creates files there. But the nice side effect of all this, when it's all completely done, and you have a completely stateless system to the point that it can boot with an empty etc and does not need to populate it on boot. Now, there's the key difference. Over the last few years, we've seen a couple of stateless implementations come up, and systemd itself supports some constructs in that it can copy files into etc in a so-called factory install. The problem is you then still need those files to actually boot. What we want to do is do what Clear Linux does and not need them at all. So you boot with a completely empty etc, a completely empty var. So any files, once this is done, any files that you actually have left in etc or in var or any over a
Those
number
are
of
all
places,
files you've modified.
those are yours. Now, the beauty of this is you only have these small files which are your delta between your system and what we ship. If you was to remove those files, you've just achieved a factory reset, which
That's
literally just
awesome.
mean doing an RMRF, bam, you are back to the factory state, which is very, very, very nice.
But it also makes a reinstall so much easier. And this is something I had to deal with when I was doing a reinstall, clear back from my Evolve OS install when
Wow,
I
so
reinstalled to 1.1. And I was like, oh man, all these files, which ones have I modified? Which ones are actually ones I've touched? I don't even remember it because this install is so old. And with all the stateless changes, that means I could look at /etc and know, okay, I've modified these because otherwise they wouldn't be here. So I
that's
should
the thing. The
probably
file
copy
is
these
still
over.
there.
Yeah, that's awesome. Absolutely love stateless. And it's inspired me in some of my own projects to sort of implement.
But I mean, it's not really hard to do because looking at it from even from say a software engineer's perspective, what you can do if you need varying levels configuration. So you should have same defaults. By default, really you shouldn't even need a configuration file. If it's something you have to do for integration, like vendor integration, then all you need to do is have a couple of paths in varying priority. So if you had something that read from the user's configuration, you'd have them first, then you'd have etc second, and then you'd have things on the file system like in user share or userlib. You'd have them last. The first one you hit, you pass that configuration file, and then you break there.
Yep.
So that's really, really simple to do, and having it fully implemented will mean that people will stop abusing what they don't own, to put it bluntly, because from Solus' perspective, well, by the time we do get to 2.0, if any package ships a file in etc is considered a packaging error, and the packaging will not continue. Like it will be erroneous. This is something that you have done wrong, and by that time, it will be forbidden for a package to be in Solus and not be of a stateless implementation. So that's kind of where we want to be with it.
Right. I mean, and that's a lot of under the hood changes that have been made to Solus, but users might have noticed, if they've gotten this update, that their desktop might be a lot snappier. Do you mind explaining some of the changes that have been made under the hood to make the entire desktop experience snappier? And
yeah, so what we did for Solus 1.1 is we introduced a new package which has the also original name of Solus hardware config. This has a number of files in it which make some sensible changes to your system to suit it for a desktop profile, which means we don't have to make extensive patches throughout basically our ecosystem, and it's easier to maintain, to be quite fair. One of the ones we done recently was affecting the default swap level, swappiness level that's used in Solus. So most machines ship with a default of 60, which between 0 and 100, that says how often I should flush my pages to disk. Anyone who's used Windows would be, they'd be quite familiar with the concept of pages. So with a higher swappiness level, that would be suitable for something like a server where you have lots of ongoing tasks and you need to make sure that that data actually does make it back to disk because you're dealing with a lot of stuff in memory and you want to make sure that stuff actually does make it back down the way. For a desktop, it's not so much of a problem. I mean, you're not running something like MySQL database or Apache or something on your desktop. It's not so much a problem. You don't have these long running tasks. And when I say long running, I mean days, you know. So they don't have high memory constraints. So what you want is for that to happen the least amount of times as possible. So the recommended swappiness level for desktops for the last few years, as put forth originally by Ubuntu, I believe, is 10. So that's what we've now gone for as well, and it's one of the little changes, along with having a full preempt, no hertz kernel, that do help to make your desktop a little bit more snappy. In combination with all the other various changes we have in place as well.
Right, like individual optimizations to say like our compiler flags and so forth for different packages. Yeah.
So each one of those augments the last, and then we get Solus really.
Right. We get all these tiny changes that add up to, a desktop optimized experience. So right. So there has been some updates towards multilib, for instance, getting things like Steam properly enabled. So UDEV is still the main blocker, but some dependencies like Bison, Flex, and PAM have been converted. since the last Sundays with Solus, and minor things like ACL and 32-bit, ACL 32-bit and ATTR 32-bit have been updated. Do you have any notes regarding 32-bit so far? And
yeah, I mean, if I was to sit down today, I could probably get it done today, but it's not terribly high up my priority list at the moment. I know that will annoy some people. It's you can't keep people happy all the time. I mean, most of the work has been done to unblock UDEV. It just has to be built from system D3. We split out the UDEV libraries. We have a 32-bit one. From there, we would then be building things like GUSB, Pulse Audio, and then most of your chain is then going to be unblocked. We'd have the rest of the SDLs done, and bam, it'd be done. But there are a lot of other things that needs to be done as well. The things that have been fester on longer. And at the end of the day, there's only so many advantages to us enabling multilib in the first place. I've made no secret of the fact that I strongly dislike the practice of multilib. I think it's one of the biggest hacks we ever have to do because we have a native 64-bit operating system. And then we need to shoehorn 32-bit libraries in just because some vendors didn't actually get the memo that, 64-bit has been around for quite a while now, and you should probably build it. I mean, I'm not attacking Steam here as such, but the fact is, Valve have said on multiple occasions that we would consider 64-bit. Then they put out a distribution which again is using multi-arch, so they don't have to make any changes in terms of Steam OS. Then we have the Steam client itself, which is a mishmash of 32-bit and 64-bit. Not only that, using ancient Ubuntu libraries, even though Steam OS is on a more modern Debian, which I believe is on Jessie as well. And, they claim that one particular component doesn't work. And it hasn't been converted over to 64-bit, and that's why the whole client is 64-bit. That's all well and good, but Valve is a software house. They make software. So to be in this day and age and to say we do not have a 64-bit port of our own software, 10 years after 64-bit is fully mainstream is inexcusable, is absolutely inexcusable. And as such, we have to clobber our own projects to support that. With that said, I had to get that out.
Right.
The only things that having multilib is actually going to enable, apart from things like the Android fastboot tools, is just going to be Wine, Steam, Skype, and TeamViewer. There are only 4 pieces of software that are going to benefit from this, from my perspective. So in terms of those, they don't get a lot of priority. I know they'd be nice to have. I really understand they would be nice to have. But when there are other bugs that are hanging around, they kind of usually take more precedence. So
that's fair. I mean, I don't really know what to say to that besides the fact that, we have mobile devices shipping with 64-bit processors at this point.
Yeah.
Like, come on, let's get things updated by now. Come on, people. Like, I'm looking at you, Steam. I don't really care for Skype personally. I know some people, it's an important part of their communications, but it's just.
I mean, there's another thing as well with 32-bit, which people do seem to be forgetting as well. Like these days, 4 gigabytes of RAM is fairly ubiquitous, right? I think we'll agree with that. That's kind of the most common thing you ship out. But more and more so now, people are going on to higher end machines which have more RAM. Now, all of these 32-bit applications, they can't see. Well, they can see, but they cannot use that amount of RAM that you have available. So one process can see around 3.2 gigs of RAM. Now, if you're wanting to play some of these fancy AAA titles coming in the next couple of years, you're not going to be able to if they're using 32-bit. So
quite a lot of them, actually. Yeah. Well, on a positive note, there has been some updates to packages.
Turning that one around.
Yeah, let's turn this around. It got a little depressing there for a moment. So Atom has been updated. Of course, they like to ship out updates as much as YouTube DL. YouTube DL has been updated as well. CodeBlock 16.01, Firefox 45.0.1, which is a bug fix release to 45. Genie 1.27 landed last night, along with VTE2 support, which I believe is that for integrated, like an integrated terminal.
Yeah,
that's awesome. Even though I use Atom, so I mean, but cool for you, right? I mean,
Genie is love. Genie is life.
Gladys 2.6 has been updated to Hex Chat 2.12. The kernel has been updated, which is awesome. It's now running 4.46. And
which addresses the CVE as well.
Yeah. It's very important if you haven't updated that you go and do that.
As for expat as well, also addresses the CVE, which is 2.1.1. I'm not even looking at a list. I'm doing all right, aren't I?
Yeah, it's not even on the list. It's a nice one. That's awesome. And this is just for the record. This is the highlights of the highlights. I mean, the list that's going to be on This Week in Solus, guys, it's punishment. I mean, ooh. So, and since the last Sundays with Solus, multiple gaming-oriented, I say that in quotes, human interface devices like some Logitech, Rawcat, and Holtec devices are now supported, which is awesome. So more of your devices are supported out of the box. The delete files permanently option has been backported from Nautilus. I figured I would give that a round of applause. I know some people like to just skip trash, you know.
I mean, the round of applause there goes to Gnome because they listen to people. So many people have accused Gnome in the past, saying you just remove features, you take stuff. But I mean, I've been trying hard to get myself more and more active in Gnome over the last few years. Even the stateless work, I'm making sure that's something we handle upstream. And I think Gnome can be the best example to other projects of how to implement that. That's why I approached them first, such as the XDG configures. I wanted that to happen there first because I think they can make it happen in the most meaningful way. But they don't really get a lot of feedback upstream until it's too late, until the changes happened. Now, there's a couple of bugs about the delete functionality, and as it goes, 3.18 already had the underlying functionality restored. So in the absence of a usable trash, which can happen on some BSD systems, or if you haven't got GVFS, it showed the permanently delete option. So it was already restored. And on the bug report, they did listen to people. They restored the option and they even added a preferences UI for it. So we didn't really do much work here at all. We just took the changes for 3.20, altered the patch so it applied to 3.18. But I mean, the kudos here definitely goes to Gnome for actually listening to the user base and saying, all right, we recognize there's a problem and we're putting it back. Thank you for your feedback.
Right.
Because people engaged. And if you engage with people upstream, then that's what happens. You get good results.
Have they disabled the recurse file search yet?
I hope to God they do.
That's something in 320 that they've done because I mean I love Nautilus and the changes that they made, especially with like the download the download dialog change and the beautiful like radial progress bar thing for like when you're doing file transfers is awesome. Huge props to them for that. But let's fix search, guys. Come on, let's do this.
That recursive search is, not for me. But then I already know the rough structure of my directories anyway, so I know kind of where to expect things. So I'll start typing a file name and expect it to highlight that one,
right?
Not to take me 17 directories deep and a home directory that's about 55 gigs.
Feels. I got the feels. So Telegram 0933, Thunderbird 38.7, transmission 292, which we personally weren't affected by the issues with 290 because that was OS X oriented. but some trackers were apparently blocking transmission to 90. So we went ahead and updated to 92. And VLC now has Opus support, which is awesome. VLC, the big monster it is, being able to consume anything in its path. It's amazing. I love VLC. So we have some Q&A. We have a couple questions lined up. So the first one is, when will some of the generic bugs be fixed, like the glitch in the budgie menu when using the panel on the bottom? Also, any plans on adding the line back from the older budgie into budgie panel or budgie menu?
So generic bugs are things that, do happen on an ongoing basis. I'm not really the best when it comes to administrative stuff. Like, I have an idea of what I'm doing, and things get fixed as a side effect of what I'm doing when I'm casting my course of destruction through the repos, and if things do get fixed. Budgie is something I haven't been able to work on properly in a couple of weeks. Funny enough, we actually got a pull request for that today, which
Yeah, I saw that land in dash dev.
which is from an Arch Linux developer who is bringing Budgie to the community repo, which, major props there. People are actually trying to port it, which is really nice. Yeah, so that bug, I'm still trying to figure out the best way of doing it. The reason it happens is frankly because we use popovers. We did so much work to make sure that we use native popovers, but native popovers don't actually have windows, which is key to the problem here. So the most realistic way to fix this issue would be to drop the use of popovers. Which I don't really see going down too well. I mean, we could do a different Windows style, but actual GTK popovers are the problem here. So what Budgie has to do is the Budgie panel is far bigger than anyone can actually see. Not at all times. So it will shrink and expand. That's basically what it has to do. And it has a box within a large window. The box is painted, for want of a better word, with the default panel style. And then what we actually do is we have to expand the entire window, and then that contains the popover. Now, for the top panel, that works fantastically. In fact, it works so well that it was incorporated into the wing panel rewrite. So that's now also a concept that's used by Elementary.
I didn't know that. That's interesting.
Yeah, so we have our code that's used in wing panel as well, and that allows the popover manager, which is something I implemented. So we only actually have two popovers by default on the budgie panel. I decided not to go with more in the end, but you will have noticed if you click on the budgie menu, you can roll across, and then the battery menu will appear, right? So that's part of one popover manager given menu bar like functionality. When when budgie panel is down the bottom, it's expanding upwards and still trying to keep itself down the bottom. So when you first click the menu button, budgie, for whatever reason, likes to think it's at the top. So the pop-over menu will literally appear at the top of the screen and then jump down, which is fine if you've got a really fast computer, because you're like, did I see that? But for 99.99% of the rest of the world,
Right.
it's like, what are you doing, bro? That's the exact reaction I have, because apparently I'm from the valley now, whatever. But that's the reaction I have. So that's one thing that we do definitely need to fix. Definitely looking for help from that. So ideas, if people want to give me a hand on that, even to scratch up some prototype work in an out of tree repo. As for the line, what is the line? I help.
What is the spoon?
Oh, the line back from older budgie into budgie. Oh, yes, I do know. So follow up with another common hack is if I'm wrong, but I'm pretty sure you mean the vertical separator, which is between the left and right panes of the non-compact menu.
Oh, I always use the compact menu. I didn't even know that. Okay.
I think that does need to come back. It's small changes that are made in the default theming which override it, which may have been an accident. It does appear with Adwaita, but we don't.
We
Yeah.
don't ship with that. Yeah.
Well, we ship it. We just don't
I
really
mean, it's
use.
the default.
Yeah. It doesn't work for me. But yeah, I think we should fix that. So +1 from me. We'll fix it. There we go.
Alrighty. So, is there any plans for Solus to partner with other computer manufacturers, well, with computer manufacturers, I guess, and have Solus installed by default?
Yes.
Yeah. Question done. Yeah, it seems simple enough. Of
I mean,
course.
so what we're trying to do is there's currently work ongoing on a complete overhaul of the installer. We've got a community. Whoa, I think I just had a stroke there. It just not the most appropriate phrase. Moving on. So we have a community member who is working on designs that they're going to present, I believe, on Tuesday. I think it was Tuesday. It was misspelled and had a H in it, so I didn't know if it was Tuesday or Thursday. But one of them, there is designs being made for it, and Solus is going to default to an OEM type installer like we had in 1.0, but without the issues. So once we have an OEM type installer, we have the infrastructure in place to allow multiple repos as well, if we have to provide vendor repos. We also have the infrastructure to build custom ISOs on demand, which means we can build one for a specific machine configuration. That device can then be imaged across to other devices, which has already been through the first stage of the OEM installer, which would then have OEM laptops. So this is part of the grand plan. Um, Solus has had to do the catching up of what we want to do because you do get the problems around and there are things that need to be fixed and we have to flesh things out. But I mean, Solus has grown a lot. Now I have 100 meg connection and I fell asleep yesterday rsyncing our repo down for local checks. So the unstable repo itself, even with a compression level of 6 XZ
Massive.
packages, was over 15 gigabytes. Now, these are packages that literally go from, so LibreOffice, to install the entirety of LibreOffice is well over a gig. The packages themselves come to just under 500 megabytes. So give you an idea of the compression involved. And our unstable repo was well over 15 gigs. So Solus has grown hugely.
All right. So, what's the reason behind dropping the live session from the 2.0 ISO? Which last I checked, the 2.0 ISO doesn't exist, but
Yeah, I mean, I know I said on Google Plus that hate is a strong word and I won't use it against other projects, but this is me using it against my other project. I hate live sessions, right? They're so hard to work with. There's so many things that go wrong. Um, if the technology to hand was better, looking at you, Draco, um, wouldn't be such a problem. But you kind of have this 128 megabytes of workable memory, which yes, we could probably improve, but then that comes with its own consequences. Live CDs can kill themselves. They are unstable. Like that sounded really bad. I did not mean like that. So you can run out of memory on a live CD and it will just stop functioning. It will run out of space to write these temporary files. Things like that really, really put me off. And then you have to clobber the file system you're putting onto the ISO. It's no longer a pure file system, but you have to accept the minimal amount of changes to that file system, which I then compensate in the installer. So, for example, the light DM config files, those are recompensated in the installer. The installer removes the users I added during ISO construction. So, you know, that's why I would really like to, but I understand why people want to keep the live CD. I really do understand that because it's that whole try before you don't buy thing. It's not try before you buy, is it? So it's
No,
try
I suppose not, considering it's free.
it's try before you don't buy. So I can understand why people do want to do it. I mean, it may just be that we decide on a complete split between OEM type ISO and fuller ISOs. I
Or
mean, it
maybe
might
have
just
one
work on
that
some.
that's like, yeah, is shipped with the live session, and then another one where, like you said, it's
It's
more
just the
oriented
installer
to
to put
just
it onto your system. I think that's probably the path we're going to go down eventually. Because people do like to try it because they want to make sure they don't put a piece of junk on their system. To be fair, um, I mean, I can understand that argument because, yeah, I mean, I don't think I would install something if I couldn't see it first. I can totally understand that. So I think what we'll do is correct the terminology on that, and say we will have a kind of bare bones OEM ISO. I mean, the installer will always be OEM style. That's what we want to go for because that actually works better. And from a technical standpoint, is a hell of a lot easier to implement because you have a running system to talk to. You don't just
right.
have it
So
on the
by
disk.
OEM installed, do you mean having sort of like the installation, so like partitioning and all that, and then sort of like the first boot setup where you have user
Right.
set up,
What's your time zone? Do you have an internet connection? Would you like one? That kind of thing. That's not what the questions are going to be. But you have that two-stage setup. So the first one is like, yeah, just put it on my disk and I'll deal with it later. And then the second stage is actually like adding users and well, your default user. So
Alrighty. Any plans to improve distribution of third-party software like Google Chrome that can't be included in the main repo? Right now, you need to run a command manually to download and install Chrome and keep checking for updates manually.
so this one is, yeah, it's a bit complex. So one of the reasons we didn't wait another year before making Solus exist, and we have these plans for Solus 2 that won't be implemented in Solus 1, is because we need to exist. We need the rest of the world to acknowledge the fact that we are now what's classed as a tier 1 distribution, which means as small as we are now up there with the big boys like OpenSUSE, Red Hat, Debian, Slackware, tier 1 distributions that aren't a derivative or aren't a fork or aren't based on something else. So we needed the rest of the world to get used to the fact that we do exist. And, people want to use Solus. So I think what you'll find will happen over time as Solus gains popularity, the current hacks that we have to use to install things like Google Chrome will disappear just by virtue of that we will get bigger and we are target in the mainstream desktop. And we're kind of notorious for not having things halfway. We don't like things halfway, and we won't put up for them for any longer than we have to. And what I would call half-arsed is the way that we have Chrome right now. Now, I want to see native EO packages for Chrome. That's what I want to see. So we will provide the tooling as we get bigger. The likes of Google will be able to talk to us. But you have to have a certain presence to be able to do so in the first place. You are not going to let the child walk into the boardroom, to put it quite bluntly. In the meantime, there are things we can do to improve the situation of third-party software. I mean, eventually, what we'll probably do is enable a partner repo. We'll provide the plumbing for them. It's something that our users need. So we're happy to put the resources into that. That's not an issue. In the meantime, we can take Justin's work and take that a little bit further and let that do the check-in for you, just to make life a little bit easier for now. Because right now it is a hack. Come on, it is a hack the way we're
Yeah.
having to install Chrome. Like we do the workaround, but all it's doing is redistributing. Well, it's not. No, it's not redistributing.
No, it
It's not
isn't.
allowed to do that.
It's pulling down the Debian file,
It's
it's
repacking.
extracting it,
It's
and
repacking.
repackaging.
Yeah, and you're doing that
We are
locally.
not redistributing.
Yeah. Backtrack on that one very quickly.
Okay, Google legal team, we are not distributing it. You could check yourself.
And we are very, very cautious of things like that. Just we've been burnt in the past for things that we've not done wrong.
Yeah.
So by no means are we going to go, to war with someone roughly the size of a planet.
Yep, that sounds about accurate. Well, if you want to help out with Solus, whether it's helping design, because Ikey can't do it and I certainly can't,
Yeah, I'm shit. Sorry.
or if you're a code monkey, particularly in C or Vala, if you want to help with packaging or testing or especially translating, because multilingual is extremely important, you could go ahead and poke Ikey, Justin, or I on #Solus, #Solus-chat, or #Solus-dev on Freenode, or, and this is a new one from last week that I didn't mention, the Solus Project Google Plus community. And if you like the work that we're doing, and if you want to donate, you could go ahead and head over to patreon.com/Solus. A monthly contribution could help with our infrastructure and make sure that the necessary hardware we need for testing and hardware enablement gets done. And we really want to thank our existing patrons, testers, donators, translators, packagers, everyone for all their hard work and support. It's really appreciated.
I mean, in the sake of transparency, so people know, they must be thinking, it's like, okay, so you have Patreon, but what's it paying for? So to avail that, at the moment we have free servers. There's 2 web servers now being paid for, which includes both the DediServe servers, by the way. That comes to somewhere around almost €40 once you include tax. Then the main repo server that we have, which is the daddy, that costs around 85 to €90 every month, and that's the one that includes the repo, which is the one that we improved that now has terabytes of storage and all the bandwidth, which has been so helpful since that guy has come in. So there are a couple of things to buy. So straight away, like the hosting bills are a little over like 120, €130 a month coming in from them. There's actually my electric, believe it or not, because I am running the beast in this front room, and that does suck on the electric.
Toadstool.
Toadstool is now the nickname of the server. If
Yeah.
anyone wants to see that, actually run dmessage on the terminal. You will find the word Toadstool printed there. So that's the kind of things we do. We've got the SSL servers coming up as well. Hardware, you know, we want to buy more hardware. And oh, there's something I didn't tell anybody. Right. Exciting announcement time.
Wait, what?
Yeah, I didn't
Announcement. I
tell you
wasn't
that.
there.
Yeah,
Yes.
I didn't tell you that either. Right. One of the problems we have at the moment is hybrid graphics. Yeah. As everybody knows, we have a problem supporting them because we do not have the hardware. Now, Ikey's just got himself a tax rebate because he's been paying out of the arse to the governments, or various governments, for the last few years. But now he's allowed to be a normal citizen and have money. It's great. Not paying 42% each month or 40% or whatever. I don't know. It hurt. Anyway, now I will have a tax rebate. I am happy to purchase a hybrid graphics laptop on behalf of the project out of my own funds, because I'm not going to spend hundreds out of Solus funds each month, because we need that as a constant income. So, anyone out in the community, I am living in the Republic of Ireland, right? I need a hybrid laptop. If you know where I can get one, and not too expensive, because I still like to buy a second-hand car as well. Thanks. If you know where I can get one, please do let me know, because I can't find any locally. And we can work something out. I'm happy to have it ordered online and sent here. And I will do the enabling myself for hybrid GPUs on Solus, which is something that affects more people than you might imagine.
Well, it's starting to affect a lot of individuals, especially with laptops nowadays, because a lot
Yeah.
more laptop vendors are shipping dedicated GPUs now that they're getting smaller. And yeah,
Right. So, I mean, it's something we definitely need to support. And again, I don't like half-assed solutions. I will agree with them so much as they are necessary. So, and when I say half-assed solutions, I do not mean to knock the work that somebody's people, right? Because it was the only way to achieve it at the time immediately for the instant gratification. So, as an example of that, I always give Netflix, right? So we had Pipeline. As a concept, it's the biggest hack, and it really is. It's an epic hack, but it worked, and people used it for so long. But now we have Netflix in Chrome. We can watch it there. Eventually, it is coming to Linux once we get the right, once we get the right CDM stuff in place. So, but everything before that was a half-hour solution. And at the moment, I look at hybrid graphics management on Linux as a half-hour solution. The fact that I have to install all of these random little libraries, virtual GL, 32-bit, and all this crap, and then I have to have Bumblebee specifically set up, or do I use Bumblebee, or do I use one of the new ones? It's it's an absolute minefield, and I do not think it's acceptable. So the only way I can really fix that is by having the laptop in front of me and having that integrated at a very fundamental level in Solus so that it just detects your stuff and knows what to do and then allows you to run your NVIDIA graphics. Now, there's a couple of things we can do there. We could even whitelist games. So things that would need GL, we can run those things by our own launcher in Solus. It's not a problem. We can share this code with other people once I have the laptop, and we could automatically run certain things need to run if it needs to go by OptiRun or any one of these little tools. We can do this stuff automatically if we need to, so that it'll automatically offload to your GPU, or it will use everything else we use your CPU. We're quite capable of doing that. We have the technical know-how to do these things. Just gonna need to get myself the laptop. So if anyone knows where I can get one, please do ping me. We have another question, which I'll allow you to read out.
Wow. Okay. I was just gonna like cut it right off there. Big announcement. It's sort of like the big spoiler. Well, not big spoiler. Like big event at the end of an episode of something. You gotta wait for the next one. But no. Okay. In regards to design contributions, I hear you have an idea for a logo. Corbin did offer to design before. I suggest you post about it on Google Plus so people actually know about it. That's not a question, Blas. This is Q&A. It's not a question. It's a statement.
Well, I mean, it's raising awareness of an issue, isn't it? So
yeah, it is.
in terms of artwork for the project, we didn't have a brand consistency issue, but we should probably enforce it more because what's the nicest way of putting this? Not everyone is as inclined to acquiesce with our needs. Fuck it, they're lazy and they don't research and they use the wrong logos, right? There's no nice way of putting it, right? Just
No,
fucking lazy. So we need something that sticks out a bit more. Need to establish that brand a bit more. So for Budgie, we now have the Budgie logo, which was provided by Yuri Henrik, and it's awesome.
It's so cute. It's so cute.
It's absolutely awesome. Funny enough, actually, Hexcube and G Plus has been working towards stuff as well. For Solus itself, we don't really have a logo. We have a two-tone textual PNG, which is a logo. It doesn't have any.
It's just letters. It's just
it just doesn't have anything.
What you did is you added the font weight a bit higher. You added the font weight a bit higher for Solus, or is it for Project? See, I don't even remember.
There you go.
I'm part of the team. That is how I remember the Budgie logo.
It's
I
cute.
don't remember if the Solus part of the Solus Project logo is bold or if it's the second part. Or do you remember?
Yeah, I totally remember.
So yeah, I mean, design contributions are always welcome.
Solus Project.
Yeah, you remember too. Yeah.
Oh well, we have just dropped off of. All right, yeah. Well, I didn't want to be on Google anyway. So our SEO is completely shot.
Noted.
Yeah, right down the bottom now. Really happy. Yeah, it's Solus as bold. I knew that.
Yeah.
So yeah, we do need to get a more graphical logo together for, Solus itself. And actually, I'm going to put something else to everybody now, right? So we renamed back to. This is so overly complicated. It's a fucking joke. Right. We were originally Solus OS, and I really dislike having OS in the name. I really dislike it. Right. I think it's a bit.
Tacky.
Yeah, it's kind of like up there with having ATM machines and.
Or having something like GNU/Linux.
Say nothing. So we renamed, as people know, for legal reasons because basically the UK government is a dick. There's no polite way of putting that. I mean, they came after a project just for using us, but yeah, I hope you burn in hell. So we renamed, and to make it really, really easy on myself, I went for a Solus operating system, which was also, again, me being a dick, knowing that people would say Solus OS, which because I wasn't allowed by the UK government to say OS. So I was like, well, I know everybody else is going to abbreviate it, so deal with it. We made the umbrella project, obviously, Solus project. Now we do have a bit of a brand consistency issue. Now people recognize the operating system as Solus, which is fine, which is what we want. However, the project itself and the structure around the Solus operating system, it's absolutely torn apart now in terms of SEO. We are losing presence. People can find Solus operating system, they can't find Solus project. And we do have an agreement with the Solus project, which is absolutely fine. And I agreed to it at the time that, there'd be no recourse from either of us over the use of the name. People can differentiate between an operating system and a game, except they can't. As we've noticed, I mean, you've seen Reddit, right? You've seen the forums. We've got people coming on the forums asking about caving, which at 3 o'clock in the morning without context is really quite shocking. Like, you shouldn't go alone. Wait, what? What, was there a bad update? Take this torch. I don't even. What? So it's getting too much for me. So I think the parent project part of Solus should probably be renamed. But that's a decision I want to make as a community. And please, no Klingon suggestions. Right? Let's do this collaboratively. That's a word I don't use often. But let's do this as a community and come up with a better name for the parent project of Solus. Let's get a better name than Solus project. One that doesn't involve games. And we can't use Evolve either because...
The game, yeah.
Fuck.
What is up with these games?
Apparently, I was always supposed to make a game. But yeah, if anyone has any suggestions, please just let us know, and we'll just rename it because more better, and then we can probably have a good logo out of it as well.
Maybe
because
that isn't space oriented.
Yeah,
nothing space oriented, please.
Nothing space oriented. Nothing religious either. Not that I have a problem against religion or that I'm not religion myself. Whatever. I mean, come on, look, right? Elementary had to rename their project, right? There was always a connotation or a false connotation when they had to rename ISIS, yeah? There is always something that's going to have an issue with that or a connotation. There's always going to be some unpredictable factor. So it's best just to avoid anything that's religious or mythical or anything along those lines. I mean, the theme of Solus project it's an Irish project. We called it Shannon. Solus itself is an Irish word. So we can have Irish words, but just not Paddy Power because that's a thing. But yeah, anyone has any suggestions, let me know. I was almost going to say leave a comment or like below. I've been watching too much YouTube. Don't do that because that's just weird. Just let me know.
Subscribe.
That's just weird. Just let me know. May as well have started the video as how we use guys. No, just let me know.
And you can do that by going to #Solus, #Solus-chat, or #Solus-dev and ping Ikey.
Or just tormenting me on Google Plus. If you can find the real me as well, you may have a problem. There's a few clones now.
I've noticed that St. Patrick's Day. What happened? Because
I don't know. I woke up and there was multiple me's. Daniel Foreign Cassidy cloned me somehow, became me, became one with the cap.
I don't know what they're working on over at Elementary, but
I don't know, man.
yeah.
Must be good.
All right. And with that, the next one, I believe, is April 3rd, 2016, the next Sundays with Solus. It happens on the first and third Sunday of every month, assuming there isn't like a natural disaster or a cave-in and we need to find our torch.
Also, Murphy, hello.
Murphy, where is he? Oh, I don't know. All right. Well, thanks everyone for watching, and we'll see you on the next one.
Okay, bye now.